Yo, what's up? This is Bobby Crow from Signs of the Swarm. Please check out our new album, Amongst the Low and Empty, out on July 28th with Records. Thank you for tuning in to John the Ninja.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing? It is John the Ninja in the dojo. What a hell of a good week, bad week. It doesn't matter because you're here with me, and I got another person here with me that is doing exceptionally well. He's taken the charge, the helm. He is now the captain of a band that he fell in love with, but now has to be considered an original member. I don't care what you think, you purists. But let's get to it. Bobby Crow from Pittsburgh, hey, that's a shout out to you, Gwen, has been running the shots for this band, and I gotta tell you, since 2015, he's really been doing a great job. They toured with Whitechapel, Suicide Silence, mixing my words, Carnifex, and Laura Shore, with Alex of Despise saying they are the next big thing. With so many lineup changes and issues and everything that has come about, Bobby and his friends have been able to keep the strong story of we want to play music and we believe in this band. This band I'm speaking of is Signs of the Swarm. They released Absolvere, which has got a little Latin in it, back in 2021, which garnered much attention, especially after that long void due to coronavirus. But now they are returning with Amongst the Low and Empty, out July 28th. And they are among the leaders of the charge of something I love to call deathcore. Here to talk about the new album and performing it, Preserving Hardcore, New Kingston, PA. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Bobby Crow of Signs of the Storm. My brother, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I love your energy. I'm stoked, and this is probably the most fun interview I've had so far. So thank you.
And I know you got a couple. We were chopping it up that, we were talking to Latin America earlier, and, you guys are literally on the trajectory. You're on the train ride now, especially after all that hard work. But before we get into that, I really wanted to dive into something I thought that was really cool. A lot of us have our first concerts, our first girlfriend, our first kiss, but your first concert was pretty kick-ass. I'm gonna say that. You had Breaking Benjamin, you had Three Doors Down. I'm like, you know what? If you're gonna start off that way, that's a good way. Can you just reminisce with me real quick before we get into anything else about how that changed your life? I remember seeing AC/DC with my dad for the first time. It was like seeing WWE for the first time. Like the excitement, the adrenaline, you don't know what to expect, but when you're in it, man, it's like popping a cherry. So walk me through it.
Yeah, I can remember. I think, I kind of grew up in the countryside, so I would see like we had like a big country festival out here, and I went to that as a kid, but it was nothing. You pretty much just sit on a lawn chair and and hang out and roast marshmallows and stuff. But yeah, so that one, my mom like exposed me to Breaking Benjamin, and then when I went to a summer school one year, I think it was like third or fourth grade, and this older kid, a bunch of people used to pick on me, and this older kid was listening to music, and I ended up talking to him. And I remember he was listening to something, and he showed me this CD, and I was like, "Oh, what is that, rap?" And he showed me the people on the back, and he was like, "Does this look like rap to you?" And it was it was either like Disclaimer or Karma and Effect or something. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh man!" So I got into that, and that dude, I ended up going to school with him years later, but he kind of got me into this whole, like rock. And then and then that record I've listened to now thousands of times, like back when you could put music on your Xbox and listen to music while you were playing Xbox. Yeah, so it would just play for like thousands of times. I was playing Halo and Call of Duty and shit. And but yeah, I remember going, I can remember what I was wearing. I was wearing this like old Corn shirt that had a hand on it, and like wristbands and like the slap on bands and the studded belts and shit. I was like 9 or 10 years old maybe. But yeah, I remember sitting there, and I think it was like, I think Breaking Benjamin headlined, and I can remember the light show. I can remember, them opening and playing, and yeah, it was exciting. That's crazy. Like even after all these years, I still go see those bands when I can, just because of that. I don't really listen to it as much as I used to. I still listen to a lot of Breaking Benjamin, honestly, but the other bands not so much. But I still love to see them. It takes me back to a place, it's very exciting. And that definitely sent me on a whole I don't know what the word is, like a tornado of metal, like it.
But I sympathize with what you said, and there's so much connection. This is why I love deathcore, because it just seems like everybody that's into it or does listen to it, we all have the same background. Like you mentioned, like playing music on the Xbox, man, I'm thinking like, damn, I listen to Metallica and like Eminem and all these. You can visualize the
Yeah.
games you were playing it to. And then again, back to like what you said, like, you know, there's a lot of bands I love, and then I hear it again, and it's like it's so ingrained in me. Like I saw Rage Against the Machine, I'm like, damn, I really hope I remember some of these songs. I'm over here spitting every single song. I'm like, damn, I know them better than I thought. So
No, I love those bands, man. I love that band. And that's the thing too. Yeah, I can remember like hanging out with my best friends for years, still my best friends now, just playing Xbox. It was like the age of the AMV videos, you know, you have like Devil May Cry, Fair Breaking Benjamin videos and shit. Like, oh man. I every now and then I put them on, I show my fiance, just kind of like, she's like, you're ridiculous. I'm like, I know, but this is my childhood, man, you know, like it's so silly, but it hits something, you know, like the anime, the metal, like you said, I think a lot of us, especially this generation of like metalcore, deathcore, kind of have that same like, you know, we grew up in the whatever late '90s, early 2000s, like internet, like online gaming was just becoming a thing. You were able to legally or not download music, you know, to your Xbox. So that was a special time.
so let me rock into this because you are a multi-instrumentalist, so good that you've actually performed different instruments on Signs of the Swarm albums. And you know, for me, AC/DC was that band. You know, I heard a bunch of bands, I was into music, but that was the band that got me like, I need to do this.
You got some guitars and basses back there.
God's blessings be with
Yeah.
my mama, man. Those shit, I probably got those in high school. But um
Beautiful.
thank you. Thank you. I try not to no, I destroy them. I take that back. I'm terrible.
But nice.
So, you know, what was that moment you said, okay, I want to learn?
When I was a kid, I think my mom's husband at the time had an acoustic guitar, and I used to play it. And it was just hard to play because acoustics are a little bit more difficult. And I remember I was like 8 years old or something, and I asked my mom. I was like, "Hey," I was like, "I would really love to get an electric guitar uh, for Christmas," you know. And so like the year went by, and she kept hyping me up. She's like, "Oh, you're gonna love what I got you for Christmas," and I'm like, "Oh shit, I got a guitar," you know. And yeah, I wake up Christmas morning, and she got me one of those like tiny, not tiny, but like a smaller like beginner drum set, just like 3-piece small drums. Not like the little kids ones, but like you know, but not like a full size. It was like the smaller snare, the smaller kick and all that. And I remember like I was stoked, but I was also like, oh, I thought it was gonna be a guitar, you know, but first world problems, you know, but I was stoked. And she said to me something that I keep, my mother has, so I have so much respect for my mother. She has so much foresight into this. She said, because she was in drumline like as a kid, and so she loved drums, but she never really did anything with it. She just kind of tapped around. But she said to me, great guitar players are a dime a dozen, but truly great drummers are hard to come by. And I've kept that with me my whole life, dude. And she's so smart. But yeah, so I started playing drums for that. I joined band in school, and I did drumline and concert band and performance, like you know, DCI all through up through college. I ended up dropping out of college, but while I was in college, I did that. And yeah, like I started tapping around playing with bands. When I was in maybe 10th grade, I had like a very casual girlfriend from another town. Like we would pretty much just text. We never really hung out that much. But her brother was a guitar player. I think brother-in-law or something, or not brother-in-law, stepbrother was a guitar player. And she was like, oh, like, you know, my stepbrother's a guitar player, and they have a singer, and they're like they want a drummer for a band. And I was like 12 years old. So I had them all come up to my house out in the middle of the woods and nowhere. And we just jammed in my basement. And yeah, I was like 12 then, and then I just was in that band for years, and we never really did anything outside of our hometown, but we did that for a long time up through high school. And yeah, and then I wanted to learn. I just kind of like casually learned how to play guitar from jamming with them. Like we would cover metalcore songs like old Kill Switch Engage and As I Lay Dying and that kind of stuff. And they would the guitar player at the time, Cody, he was incredible for he hasn't done anything musically since he went to the army. He's doing great, he's got a great family and all that, which is awesome. But he was incredible. When we were kids, I was always blown away that he could play these riffs from bands that I like never could have thought to play. But he would teach me some things. So because back then we didn't have any recording equipment or anything. So for him to learn how to play solos or learn how to play harmonies, like he would teach me like the bass riffs, and be like, okay, play these chords so I can do this and that kind of thing. So I just very like shittily learned how to play guitar like that. And yeah, I still don't really consider myself like a guitar player, honestly. Like I don't have a very great understanding of the instrument, but like I can I can get what's in my head out, like especially with help from a computer and all that. But I think the band, I think really some of the band, there was a lot of bands, of course. Like I know you said AC/DC, like I used to love AC/DC as well. I remember one of the first trying to learn Thunderstruck on guitar when I was like, 10 years old, and I couldn't do it. But I around the time I got that drum set, I was exposed to like Slipknot and Slayer and I mean, what is some of that? Cradle of Filth. But yeah, like I remember the first time I tried to learn drums, I was trying to learn like 3 Days Grace songs and Seether because like those were a little bit easier, like just like this kind of thing. And I would do that, and bless my parents for letting me play drums, all day. I would go to school and play all day and come home and play all night. And Rock Band was huge. I would set up the Rock Band practice mode where you wouldn't get kicked off, and then I would set my drums up in front of my TV in my basement, and then I would play to the tracks as they come down. It would teach me how to play songs like that over and over and over again. So that was a huge part of it, honestly. I would just turn my TV up super loud and then watch and try to play quiet to like learn the stuff. Oh, Avenged Sevenfold. Avenged Sevenfold was a huge drumming band for me. I learned a lot from listening to Jimmy play, and yeah.
Before we get back into the music, because now you're hitting chords left and right, bro. You said something that I found not just for myself, but a lot of other musicians and a lot of other people, that your mom had the foresight to say, great drummers are, harder to find than great guitarists. And I remember not even remotely close, but it reminded me when I was a kid, the PlayStation 2 just came out, and I was going to get an Xbox. They had some Bruce Lee game for it. I was Bruce Lee mode. I was in Taekwondo. I wanted my Xbox. I saved for that Xbox. And when I went there, the guy was telling me, no, you don't want an Xbox. You want a PlayStation. Now, I don't know where I got the attitude as a third grader. Like, who the hell are you to tell me? But my mom took me aside and said, you know what? Think about this. Go home. Evaluate what he said. Make the decision then. And I went back and forth with her about it. Not like, hey, what the hell? But more so like, hey, what should I do? And then that ended up being the better option. And I can think back of other times my mom made a decision to help me or put me on that trajectory. Can you remember any other times your mom did that for you, where you kind of just sit back? Because we're all in awe when our moms do that. It means so much that they, without knowing what we're thinking, they're able to push us to where we need to go.
Yeah, well, it's I kind of had the same not so much with my mom, but I had the same Xbox PlayStation thing. I went back and forth so much because I ended up having a PlayStation for most part, and then my friends had Xbox. And when the 360 came out, I ended up getting that instead of the PS3 because all my friends and we were playing Gears and Halo and all that shit. So yeah, same thing. It's funny. Again, it's such a small, the metal world's so interesting like that, right? But man, I think. Oh yeah, there's one other huge one actually. So when like I said, my parents were split up, no big deal. We had a good vibe growing up anyways. But my mom lived in a different school district. She lived in Ohio, and kind of out in the woods. Like I said, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. My mom lived on a farm, my dad lived in the sticks out here. So but I would go back and forth all the time. And when I was getting into high school, I much preferred living with my mom. I just liked the area. I had some friends out there, but I had been going to a different school district for my whole life. So when I came to go to high school, my parents gave me the choice, like, do you want to stay here and go to this school, which is Wheeler Park, or do you want to go out to a Union Local, which is in Ohio? And I almost went to Union Local just because I liked that area a lot. But I decided to stay in the town that I was in, and she kind of pushed me because I was doing music. I was in drumline, and that high school had an incredible music program, like one of the best. It wasn't a big school. I mean, it was pretty big. We had like 2,000 kids, but like the area isn't very big. It's a pretty small town, but it was just all the schools kind of go to that high school, So huge music school. They did competition bands, had an incredible arts program. Like the speech and debate team has been like #1 in the country for like 40 years or something. It's just really awesome stuff. And they have great teachers. And Yeah, so I met my fiance in high school, and we're still together now, 12 years. So like, I would have never met her. I never would have never met the guys that I started my first band with if I would have moved. I never would have, and I would not be here. I would not have any life that I have now if I wouldn't have gone to that school. And she kind of pushed me to do that because she knew I loved music and I loved being in drumline. And I wasn't in a band, but I was playing drums a lot in middle school. And yeah, she was kind of like, well, you could go here, you could go there, but if you want to do, if you, they kind of gave me a choice. Like, if you want to do football or music, if you want to do football, go to this school. If you want to do music, go to this school. And I was already so deep in music that I decided to do that. So yeah, she kind of pushed me into that. That was a very big one. My whole life would be entirely different if I had not made that decision. So
But
I
that
think that's
also
a big one.
But that also is a testament to you already knowing what you wanted to do. Like, I do music, I do sports, I have my hand in so many things, but when I do something, it's like you don't want to give it up, and it's hard to pick. So for you to know, I was gonna bring this question lower down the line, but you did mention now your fiance, not your girlfriend no more. Congratulations. But
Oh, thank you.
you know what, man? It's a reoccurring question I always ask everybody when they have a significant other. How'd you guys meet? This and that. But what is your bond with her like? Because she's the one, especially in this industry. It's like wrestling. It's musicians. It's guys that are on the road all the time. Lemmy told Lips of Anvil. Don't get married. It's not fair to the woman. She needs someone there. You need to be a rock. And Lips didn't take his advice. Ted Aguilar's been doing well with his wife, but they've stressed like this is hard. So walk me through
Yeah.
your relationship, your happy moments, how y'all met, and how she kind of was like, hey, listen, I can't do this without you, and you the same.
Like I said, we got together in high school. It was very much like high school sweethearts kind of thing. It was great. We just knew each other. We used to hang out. We used to listen to. We got together when I was in my first band ever. I think that band that I started in my basement. So we were like, I don't know, 16 maybe. Um, and so we used to share headphones after school and after lunch, and we would listen to like Whitechapel, and we'd try to find like the craziest stuff and show it to each other. And um, but yeah, I mean, the touring, like we got together and I started touring kind of like maybe 2 years after that, like right out of high school. And yeah, I mean, bless her heart, I can't say enough good things because I think if I were in a position now where if I let's just say in a worst case scenario, if I ever had to, like in the last few years had to date, trying to explain what I do to people and find someone that's understanding. And I know this from other bands, people, it's very hard to build a relationship and maintain that when you do live this lifestyle. So I'm very grateful that I had that, beforehand, and had someone that's extremely, extremely understanding, truly the most understanding person that I've ever met. And she's very sweet. But yeah, it never gets easier, like the road thing, it never really gets easier, but we have gotten good at working through it. It's really the last 2 years I was the most touring that our band had ever done. We were gone for a lot. Like, she actually showed me a calendar where she had like blocked off all the times that I was gone. And it's really sad to see the time that I was home versus the time that I was gone. But we just kind of like, we came out of the pandemic, and there was a point where everyone, you thought, maybe we'll never tour again, this might be gone. So we just started taking every offer we got, just because we were like, we need to be on the road again. We need to be out as much as possible. And we're very fortunate that offers kept coming in, but we had kind of planned through the year, not thinking about touring. Like, we got a puppy and he's wonderful, but he's a handful, right? So like, just that kind of shit, and like, we just moved recently. So trying to work through all that, in between touring and all that it's a lot, man. It is really a lot. So, but yeah, she's what I could not do this without her. And I think she could probably, I tell her all the time, I think she could survive without me, but she tells me she can't. So I don't know, but it's she has a little bit more of a normal life, a normal job, you know what I mean, which is very good. It's nice to have stability, because in this type of work there is very rarely stability, you know what I mean? It's nice to have somebody there.
Remember Jeff Allen, the comedian, talking with me about like during the pandemic, he was sitting there and his wife was like, this is the longest you've ever been home. You know, and it just kind of that realization of like how much you're truly on the road. But I'm gonna send you this clip, man, because you know you're starting to tear up. Anytime you get under the burner with her, you know you can show her like, hey, you know, I'm crying. I still love you.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had, like that was the thing when I think during the pandemic, when it first hit, was the longest I had been home for a while. And I mean, we had only done maybe like 3 or 4 tours a year at that time, so we'd be gone like 3 or 4 months. Um, and then I was home, and I spent so much. Like when I started touring, it's like I said, I'm kind of from a small town. It was like to get out of the classic. I wanted to get out of the town. I wanted to go do other things and kind of break out of the monotony. And then once that happened, it kind of forced me to like, it made me realize a lot of stuff just being home. I was like, like I actually like being home more than I thought that I do. You know what I mean? At the time. Um, and yeah, so now it's kind of changed. When we do go on tour now, it's more like we love it. We're a tour, we will always tour. That's just what we do. But it's more of a means to be home. It used to be like tour, was the means to be away, right? Now it's like we love to do it, but it's always a means to get home and enjoy the time we have here. So we try to make the most out of what we can while we're home, since it's not as common as it should be, honestly.
But you also people may not have the knowledge that you guys have been through hell and high water, like an old school touring band. Y'all had vans explode, y'all been robbed, shifted. So it's not like you haven't earned your stripes in that field, like that lifestyle, you know. But with being the head of the band, I don't care what anybody says, and I mean no disrespect to the fellas in the band, but you've been through everything. You know, the band started in 2014. You found them in 2015. You were just streaming on online, heard them, was like, damn, this is good, and you know you ended up joining the band. You know, could you kind of walk me from the first meeting and being indoctrinated into picking up the reins and actually becoming the leader? Because again, you know, it is so cool to see how you've survived every iteration. You did have that I forget between when, it was sometime between 2016 and then where you had to step away for a little bit, but you came back. But your love for this drove you, and you didn't even create it. So could you walk us through how you
Yeah.
became?
Yeah, I can get to that. That's pretty, yeah, for sure. So it started like the band formed in 2014. I had heard about, they were based in like pretty much downtown Pittsburgh, and like I said, I lived kind of on the sticks, so I would have to drive to Pittsburgh to see shows and stuff. But before they had ever played a show, they just had a practice room at like the local practice spot in the city, and there's like a bunch of rooms there. And it was just three of them. It was a drummer, guitar player, vocalist at the time, and they posted a video of them just playing through some songs they had. And they said that they were looking for more members. They were looking for a guitar player and a bassist. And I had, like I said, I learned to play guitar like kind of poorly, from my friends and stuff, but enough that I was like, oh, like these are pretty easy songs on guitar. They're just really heavy. And I was like, I really want to do something different. I've been playing drums in bands for like 7 or 8 years at that point. And yeah, I was like, man, I really want to branch out and like play guitar and try something different. And I was still in other bands at the time too, but I hit them up on Facebook because they were looking for somebody, and they didn't reply to me for like a month. And then they posted again, like late 2014, like, hey, we're still looking for members. And I was like, hey, I reached out. I don't know if you saw it. And CJ was like, oh, like here, hit up Cory. This is his number. Like he's kind of like the guy, And I hit him up, and they eventually, I pretty much punished them into letting me like come and hang out and try out. And I sent them like some like songs I tried to write on Guitar Pro that were not very good, but they were like, yeah, you kind of have the idea, like you have the vibe, cool. And yeah, I just showed up, went to their house one day and hung out. I think I showed up, we went to the practice room, and I had all the songs down, and that was just it. We never really talked. There was never really a moment where it was like, hey, you're in the band. It was like I just kept like, hey, we're having practice now, come hang out. I'm like, cool, and I just kept going back, and then we did my first show with them, I want to say, was like January of 2015. And they had kind of been working on the band for a couple years, like just Cory and CJ, like in high school. They had different names, they had demos and stuff. But yeah, that was like the first iteration really of like the band performing at like, shows. It was early 2015. And yeah, I mean, even then, even between the time of like me coming in, like late 2014, early 2015 to us playing any shows, there were lineup changes there too. Like the whole first year of the band was a lot of people in and out. So it's funny, like sometimes people will be like, oh, like this person was an original member. And it's like, they're actually not. They were just, the first time we ever had pictures or anything, you know what I mean? So even before then, there was maybe 3 or 4 people that came in and out, and then they went to start other bands and stuff. Yeah, we did shows. I think we had a show like late 2015, where our drummer at the time, Greg Charlie, he's a great dude. I still bump into him at shows. I have a lot of respect for that guy. But he had like a death in the family, I want to say, something like that. So it was like the day of or the day before a show. He was like, and it was one of our bigger shows. It was local, but it was like one of our first shows at like a nice venue. It was like a local showcase. And Dave's old band actually played that show too, is what's really funny. And also, I think the band that was playing, the headlining band was Delusions of Grandeur. It was a video shoot, and that guitar player is now Gabe from Enterprise Earth. So like that whole family is like, you know what I mean? It's kind of this family thing. But I remember we got a message, and Greg's like, I'm so sorry guys, but I can't make the show. And we were like, well, we really want to do it because it's, like a bigger show for us. So I was like, well, fuck, I can play drums. I've never really played the songs on drums, but I know them. So it's like, I think I can play it enough to get through the show if you guys want to still do it. So that's how I ended up coming back to drums after trying so hard to not play drums. Like I wanted to play guitar for this band. And then like shortly after that, I think Greg just kind of, I'm not sure if the family thing hit him hard, but I think he just decided to step out. But it was very friendly. I'm still friends with that guy. He's a very good dude. So that's how I ended up playing drums. And then we got busier and busier, and I was touring with another band, a pop punk band I was playing drums for around the same time. And some of the guys didn't really want to tour in Signs, and I was touring a lot with this band, and that's what I wanted to do. I dropped out of school so I could tour, and well, out of college. It's not high school. I dropped out of college so I could tour. And yeah, I just came to them and I was like, hey, like I'm touring a lot. This is what I want to do. If you guys don't really want to do this, like, I'm sorry, I can't really survive on it, just kind of playing around here. And everyone was just like, okay, like we'll find somebody else. So we got Jimmy, and he came in, and I actually, like, we did a practice where I played everything and he kind of watched, we hung out, and it was really respectful. It was just kind of like passing the torch, you know what I mean? And then like not even like a month later, they got a tour offer after I kind of like decided to step back. They got a tour offer, and it was a good tour. I can't even remember what it is, but I went to like Canada and down the East Coast and a couple other shows. And the bass player at the time couldn't do the tour, and they were like, hey, all these songs, we got a tour offer. In my head, I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like, you're going to take tours after I quit, after I tell you, I want to tour. But yeah, they needed somebody, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm here to tour. Like, I was still friends with everybody. It was like very casual, it wasn't like I was mad when I left. It was just, I was being honest. And yeah, so I picked up bass because I knew all the songs on guitar already. I was like, yeah, I'll do this tour for you guys. And then after that, the bass player was like, yeah, like I don't really want to tour. So they just asked me if I'd stay on bass, and I just did, because I wasn't gonna be like, well, no, I want to play drums. Like, Jimmy was nice, especially the time we got along really well. And I was just like, yeah, like I still love the band. I love the music. I helped write the music. I would be happy to be a part of it. And yeah, we kept going. We lost members. We lost CJ at a time, and then Jimmy decided to leave right after we finished our third record. And we were talking about asking drummers to join the band, and we asked some people, some friends, but some people didn't want to do it. It's kind of extreme music. Some people thought they couldn't do it, and I was like, well, it's hard to find a drummer. It's easier to find a bassist. Like, if you guys are interested, I was like, I will just play drums because it's going to be so much easier than trying to teach somebody all the little nuances and how you feel comfortable playing with a drummer and where they're supposed to count you in and all, and learning all the songs. So that's how I ended up playing drums again. Yeah. So, I was gone for about a month and a half, just because I had other priorities. I basically, I needed to work. I needed to be on tour so I could make money. And yeah, and then it just happened that the band started getting tour offers right after they, kind of said they didn't want to tour. But it's really interesting, that whole era of how that panned out, but yeah, and then I just kind of kept going. Touring is very difficult. We had a lot of lineup changes, and I did some writing. I didn't really do like any writing on the first record because Cory had pretty much the whole record written before they'd even started like getting members for the band. So I had a little bit of stuff here and there, but most of that was him. The second record, I had a couple songs, and we'd work together. I'd throw some ideas. The third record, I had a lot more songs on the record. I had like 4 songs. And then yeah, after that, so I just kind of got more comfortable like finding my place in the writing style with the band, and Cory used to live with me actually. We were roommates for a very long time. So we would write, like our whole second and third record we wrote together in my attic basically, and I finished Attic. We wrote that together. And then yeah, he left, or we pretty much mutually parted ways. And at that time, that was it. Like we were pretty much had no guitar. We had to find more guitar players, So, and we were planning on writing another record, and that was like right in the middle of the pandemic. And so I just started writing a lot, and it never really happened on purpose. I was just like, well, no one else is gonna write really. Like no fault to anyone else. It's just like, well, who else is gonna do it? We gotta just buckle down and do it. And yeah, so I started writing a lot, and like very fortunate everyone kind of liked what I was doing in the band. And we try not to, that was kind of the moment where we tried to started not thinking about things too hard. Like our third record, we were like really thought about it a lot. We went to a big expensive studio, spent a bunch of money, and it was a good record, but I think that it was kind of jumbled and we didn't have a lot of time to really make it what we wanted to. So when that time came around, it was that's where we kind of started just doing what we like. I think the first single we did that was just me pretty much at the helm was Pernicious. So that was before Absolver. And that you could kind of tell the change of the band there, where we just started just like, fuck it, we're gonna do whatever we want. You know what I mean? Like we're not gonna really try to stick to this sound. There was really nobody in the band from that time that was doing the writing except for me. So I was like, well, I try to respect that, I try to keep that sound in the band. But also like if I have to do this and I have to write music all the time, I want it to be something that I want it to be, right? So, that's kind of how that just came about. And then when Dave came into the band, he took over a lot. He has done more for the band as a member than pretty much anybody else had up to that point. Like, we put out our second record, Disfigurement, in 2017. Yeah, and we did like 2 tours on it before CJ quit and went to Lorna Shore. And we picked Dave up. He quit with 11 days before our 60-something day tour with Ingested. So we called Dave, and Dave was just like, Dave had a pretty good life. He had a good job. He was a welder, but he had been in another band that wasn't really doing much. And I knew he loved, being in a band, and he wanted to tour. So we hit him up, and he just dropped everything and came out and did like these 2.5 months with us like a psychopath. And yeah, I mean, he really carried like a lot of the weight. Like, like CJ recorded on the record, but if it wasn't for Dave, that record never would have seen the light of day outside of just music videos. So yeah, he took over a lot. He's been like my right hand man. Sometimes I'm his right hand man, sometimes he's in charge. And we were self-managed for a long time, and then now we actually have like a team, which is great. So it gives us a little bit more freedom to not stress. We still stress a lot, but to not stress quite as much about the little details. But yeah, that's pretty much like the history of Signs in like 10 minutes.
Bro, your fans are gonna eat this up, because I remember reading the liner notes too. You like, now we got the proven, undefined, undeniable fact. This is what happened.
Somebody sent me one time, I didn't even know we have a Wikipedia page, and somebody sent it to me with like the little timeline of all the guys in the band and stuff. And I'm like, honestly, this is like completely wrong, but like, I don't know, I can't edit it or anything. I don't know who does that stuff or whatever. So, but yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of, because we've had so many changes, it's been like 10 years, there's a lot of misinformation. And but yeah, that's the general arc of my story with the band. I'm sure there's a lot more, that other people have other perspectives, but that's from when I came in, that's what I have.
Who's leaving hit you the hardest?
I think the scariest one was losing CJ, but we had kind of saw it coming at the time. Like he didn't really want to tour a lot, didn't seem very happy. And then he called me and was pretty much just like, hey, I got an offer. I can't refuse it. He's like, I'm gonna have to go. And I was just like, I was like, it sucks, but it's probably for the best. And we were all pretty on the same page about it. But that was scary because that tour, we had a huge, our first like major US tour. We had been around the country, but it was our first time doing like every city like multiple times, so that was scary trying to find somebody. We were worried we'd have to drop, and luckily Dave like saved our asses on that, honestly. But I think the most emotional one for me, and this is, it's hard to say because I've been just as close with everybody that's been in and out, honestly. I feel like I'm been no disrespect to anyone else, but I feel like I'm kind of like the Rock. Like a lot of people come to me, to talk about things or whatever, just because I'm a very chill person, I think a lot of people I have good relationships with pretty much everyone who's been in the band. But like I said, Cory, we felt like we pretty much grew up together, like our later high school years. When we first started writing for this band, like our second and third album, I used to go stay at his house. His parents would, welcome me into their house. I would stay with him for weeks at a time. His mom would like bring us chocolate milk and pizza and, like that kind of thing. And then when he started looking for a place to live, my fiance and I, we had a pretty big house out of town. He moved into we had a finished attic, which is basically just a big bedroom, and he moved in with us. So he lived with us for like 3 years, I think. So, and then he moved out, and then, the whole thing with Cory is like, we didn't hear from him for a really long time. He had a lot of personal stuff going on. And then obviously he had things that came up that I still don't fully understand, honestly. We've never really fully talked about it, but so when things started coming up about him, we were just like, hey, like obviously you have things you need to take care of, and you should probably go take care of them, and we're going to keep doing our thing. That one hurt a lot because I kind of had to be that guy, and he was like my brother to that point, you know what I mean? And I still care about him, but I don't really talk to him very much, unfortunately. It's just kind of how it is. I'm very busy, and he's obviously very busy now with his life. So, but yeah, I mean, that was somebody that I spent so much time with, like from day one. We never had an argument. We never, we were always kind of like two peas in a pod, you know what I mean? And we were like that with some of the other guys too, but he was always like the constant. We always had people in and out, but he was the first guy I talked to, really the first guy. I spent a lot of time with him, and then he moved in with us. And so that one was hard, honestly. It's never easy losing people, but we always try to use it as an opportunity to change and grow and look within ourselves as people, not just a band, and like really like see how we can become better for it, So I'm very proud of our band and the people we have in the band that are like super adaptable and positive thinking for the most part, to be able to like take these things on the chin and become, stronger for it, because it's hard. This kind of shit breaks up a lot of bands, especially when it's somebody like that is so important, to the band at the time. So yeah, that was tough. I mean, they've all been tough, but like I said, we've all always kind of come out stronger. So I'm grateful for that.
And people really don't realize how easy it is for a band to break up or something like that, to hinder it so much that they never get back to where they were.
Yeah.
You guys got with Century Records, that was a big deal, but I was still interested in when you guys were managing yourself, because that's truly eye-opening. You guys took a lot of, talk about punches to the face. I was curious, not a lot of bands get into the situation where they are on their own and have to worry about every little detail, not just the money, but the legal and the aspects of touring, and can we do this? Do we have time for this? Would you elaborate one of the biggest lessons you guys learned right before Century came in and, you got management? What was something that you were doing? And I don't necessarily think I'm looking for that, like, oh, they effed us over moment, like we should have known, but more so something that was like, we really have to watch out for this. We really have to take charge of this because this is our brand.
That's actually a great way to sum it up, really. So we had managers off and on, and we've had a good relationship with just about everyone we've ever worked with. We've never really been like, purposely like screwed over or anything, like taken advantage of. But we were working with this management team that had a lot of clients and some bigger clients. We were kind of like smaller fish, and they kind of did a lot of just like, we'll set all this stuff up for you, and you basically just like you get your reports, you know what I mean? And like when you hear that as a younger band, we were in like our early 20s, it's like, cool, great, this is like what every band is looking for, right? And a few years ago we kind of realized like that wasn't really working out, and we ended up self-managing for a little while, and Dave and I just, so many things clicked to us at that time. There were so many things that we just kind of let go under the radar because we just trusted people, and we realized how much we were not paying attention to, just like where money is coming from, basically how to talk to people. We found that having managers great, but most of the time the people that you work with want to talk to you like genuinely. We ended up like strengthening a lot of our relationships with like our label and like the merch companies that we work with, that kind of stuff. Promoters, our agent, just by kind of taking that on and taking the reins on it. And um, it just, yeah, it forced us to learn how to be a business more than a band, I think, and like really pay attention to the ins and outs of everything. But that was a few years ago. Like I said, we have a wonderful manager now who's very, very good at his job, very considerate. And he's texting me right now. I spend almost most of my day on the phone with him. He's a very good friend. He's very good at his job. But yeah, I mean, just we learned a lot from that. Just like I said, how to be more than just guys playing an instrument. You know what I mean? How to like handle ourselves and take care of our band as a business. And yeah, no, and like, yeah, we were with Unique Leader for a long time. I'm super grateful for them because they were the first people anywhere to take a chance on us, to like, management, whatever. They were the first people to like want to be, that were interested in us. And like Eric Lindmark, he was the founder of that label. He passed away a few years ago. He like talked to us directly. Like our old guitar player Jacob used to play like World of Warcraft with him and shit. And like, so yeah, that was very special. But we, in the nicest way possible. It was probably a decent deal for where we were as a band, but we ended up getting a pretty shit deal at the time out of it. And I don't take it personally. I know how the business is. I know how it is. It is what it is. On paper, it's a pretty shit deal, but at the time, we were just so stoked to have something. We were like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." So and then the label ended up getting taken over by another guy after Eric passed. His name's Jamie, and he's a very good guy, and he kind of like was very honest with us. He's like, honestly, the deal you guys got is not that great. Like, I'd like to, work with you and give you some better options and this and that. So we did that. And, he helped us out a lot. He helped us with touring, getting tickets sometimes for us to go overseas, help us afford our CDs and that kind of stuff. That stuff gets very expensive. So yeah, I mean, I think Unique Leader, doesn't that doesn't they're not a huge major label, but I think they would like to be seen as that way. But I mean this as respectfully as possible. We just got to a point where we were kind of outgrowing it, and it is what it is, and we couldn't really afford to like try to bring them up with us. We needed to go bigger, we needed to do more, and I wish we could have, but it's just where the band was at. It didn't make any sense, unfortunately. So yeah, we ended up talking to a bunch of labels, talked to Century, and the people at Century just like treated us like family. They were, from the get-go, they were just so nice and interested in us as people more than just a band and numbers. And we got to meet a lot of those people. And yeah, we learned a lot with being a little bit more self-managed, and we carry that with us now, sometimes to a fault because we're very nervous people. Probably for the best.
And it just goes to show the importance of that label too, man. I'm seeing all these labels where it's not just, they say family, but the real thing is the label are fans. These are individuals who grew up listening to the same thing, already are fans of you. So it's so much more personable, no matter, if it's Century, Nuclear Blast, sheesh, I forgot how to say Def Jam. Lord have mercy. But, you get the idea. So what I found intriguing is because during the pandemic, and this is personally for me, I kind of feel like I was cheated. I kind of felt like I got a lesson out of it because that was the most busy work wise I've ever been in my adult life. It was insanity. I had the option to work. I took it. I was very fortunate that I was making that money. But it was like, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I'm working, and then a little bit some at home with whatever I had to do. And I think about everybody that's gone through the same thing. And watching your story of when you were doing Absolvery, man, you were working at the pizza shop, then you coming home, hopping on Zoom, and you guys were able to create the album. It's brilliant. I love it because it's like, hey, this is what we got, and it was safe and it was cool. But you were legitimately busting your ass writing the music, working with the guys, orchestrating. You know, when it comes to the feeling of recording that album versus recording this album and taking some of what you learned from the Absolvery recordings, what was expanded upon, and what was really like, hey, we have to do that again for the new album Amongst the Low and Empty?
Yeah, I was busting my ass at a pizza shop. I got that job like right before the pandemic, I think, and I had been there for about a year, and it was a really cool, small, like local shop. We kind of go in, you could do what you want. You could. My boss probably didn't know, but you could hang out and you hit little dab pens and work, and everyone was good. It was very, very good. A very good environment for the most. I mean, food work is hard. You get taken advantage of, especially by the customers and stuff. But yeah, so that was hard. I would do that. I would work like noon to 10 or 11, and then I'd come home, I'd get on Skype with the guys, and we would Skype back and forth, and I could share my screen, and we would write pretty much every Sunday and every Wednesday, because my shop was closed on Sundays. So every Sunday and every Wednesday we would do like all day writing sessions for a couple months. And yeah, so that was different because we wrote I ended up tracking all the guitars. Jeff and I tracked all the guitars on our own, and we had done that with our second record. We tracked all of that in my house, aside from drums, but we did vocals there. But so for that record, yeah, we did all the guitars and like all the production computer work on my end. And then we went to a studio, just a small local studio, a friend of ours, just a little room for drums and a little room for vocals. And we tracked that stuff there, and super cheap. Great guy. His name's Shane Meyer, Cerebral Audio. He's a killer dude, killer little studio in Pittsburgh. Yeah, so that was because we were scared to go anywhere because of COVID, actually, so it was, I think, winter of 2020, and then early 2021. So we did all that tracking together, and then we went up to him. We're up masks on in between takes and that kind of thing, and he was really cool about it. I don't think we really could have went anywhere else because of the pandemic. So, and then we sent that off to somebody to get mixed. But so this record, we were on tour a lot. We didn't have a ton of time to write. We tried really hard to write on the road, but it's just very hard to get in that mindset. It's very hard to find a quiet place. And I'm kind of weird. Like, a lot of people like to say like, oh, I make this, heavy, dark music. I need to be in a dark place and that kind of thing. But I'm actually completely different. Like, I want to be in a good mood. I want to feel good. I want to be like comfortable here at home and just having a good time. I do my best work when I'm happy, truly, versus Dave does a lot of his best writing because he writes from a very dark place, pulling from more negative things. And so it's just interesting, that kind of dynamic, you know what I mean? But so we wrote this record, and most of it in the studio over the course of like 2 months. And we wanted to keep, a lot of the heavy stuff. I think we had a good vibe going with our last record. But we kind of had different ideas pulling in different ways from different members. So some things got a little bit lost in translation, I think. But so yeah, this one was different because since I did a lot of the writing, like the majority of the writing just instrumentally, and and like drums and guitar, it felt a little more cohesive. Like it wasn't like, the guys would come in and be like, try this, which is great. But we never had any of those moments where it would be like, oh, we write a song, and then it's like, well, I don't like it. We have to go back and change this whole section. We did with like a couple little parts, but it was never anything like, I hate this. You know what I mean? What you get sometimes when you have a lot of minds on one song. So, but yeah, we just tried to keep the heavy for us is a much more of like a feeling. I talk about this all the time. It's more of a feeling than a sound. Like it doesn't have to be a breakdown. It doesn't have to be this. It's just, it's a feeling. Like country music, rap music, all these things can be heavy. Fucking Rage Against the Machine. Like to me, they're an insanely heavy band, right? But it's not deathcore or metalcore, right? So it's just getting that feeling, but still trying to sound like us and sound unique. And yeah, so we really liked the atmosphere from from our last record, just like a lot of the clean stuff, the soundscaping. That was my first time like really experimenting with that kind of stuff, and I had a lot of time to do it. Learning how to use a computer to write music, because we used to just kind of write and like track it on our phones and that kind of thing, you know what I mean? So being able to like use MIDI and use all these sounds and stuff was huge, because it kind of changed the way we think about writing music. So we did a ton of that on this record. I think we had a lot more time to learn how to use like non-traditional instruments to make sounds. I love like movie scores, like I love Hans Zimmer and like the work he does for like The Dark Knight and Interstellar and Dune and that kind of thing. Honestly, Dune was a huge inspiration for me for this record. And I really love industrial bands like Rammstein and Fear Factory, and Dave's really big into R&B and rap and like the kind of vocal production. You get like those glitchy things and the repeats and that kind of echoey kind of stuff on vocals. So I think bringing all that together, and then obviously working with Josh Schroeder and Joshua Travis, who's a legend in production. And Josh Travis just did a lot of post-production. So we'd send him songs. We'd be like, this is it. But we would love to have your ear on it. Like, what are things that you hear that you might want to change? It was pretty much just a second ear. So he would just kind of make crazy sounds. Like Amongst the Low and Empty, our single, there's a whole drum break that's just like double kick and like some techie synth pad stuff. Like that kind of stuff was him. So yeah, we just get a lot of that kind of sound. Also, Cameron Lush from Born of Osiris, he co-wrote some of the songs with us. He's a really good friend of ours. And we talked to him. David actually talked to him about doing a whole different project like last year, and it just never really worked out. So we were talking to him about like writing music, and he's like, I've really wanted to work with a heavier band. He's like, I have some ideas. So he would pretty much send us like little clips of songs that he would write, and I would be like, okay, like some of this stuff is really cool, and it makes me think differently than just what I think if I'm just sitting with a guitar and a computer. So I would take that stuff and then kind of just try to like, it was really like 2 or 3 ideas, and I would just try to make it sound like the band. And then we would pretty much like take it apart, redo it, take it apart, redo it, and that kind of thing. And so that just influenced the rest of the record, you know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, we have these sounds, I want the record to feel this way. How do we do that and make it sound like Signs? And I think the beauty in that is Dave has such an iconic voice, honestly, where I can do just about anything as long as it feels heavy, like I was saying before, and his voice is going to make it sound like the band. So I'm very fortunate in that realm, because I get to spread my wings a lot, and as far as being creative and musical and doing just whatever I want to do, as long as it sounds good. And his voice ties it together. So like if you listen to the whole record front to back with instrumental with no vocals, it would sound still great. There's a lot of awesome soundscaping, it has the vibe, but his voice is what makes the whole thing feel like a Signs record. So some of the songs are very different from one another. And I think he's like the glue that holds that together.
And hold up, man, I'm not gonna lie, Interstellar was hitting deep. I am a Hans Zimmer fan too, but the song that made me, as soon as you said like experimenting with the sounds and stuff, Faces Without a Name, same at the end, all those sounds and stuff. I was like, now you kind of answered where that vibe came from. But let's go back to our man Dave, because watching your videos with him, either interview or Bus Invaders, they need to give you a damn award for how many times you've been on it, low key. Watching him for the first time before I saw the older interviews, like, this dude is in charge, he's the lead singer. And then I go back to when he first joined the band, and that kind of gives me a little bit more of an idea of who he is as a person. He's a little bit more, not as rambunctious. He's a cool dude. He's relaxed. you would have thought the random emo kid in high school that you could chop it up about Chemical Romance with. And watching and listening his performances from when he started till now, it's very evident for somebody who studies vocal techniques that he's improved. He's trying to get it right. And one thing that he said that Fire and Stone was the challenge for him on this record. I don't know if you can speak for him on that, but could you tell me the recording process of that? And you can hear him doing better, but what was getting to him, and how did you damn bro, you really you just a great singer, man. Give me a hug, that admiration for him.
I speak praises for Dave, especially vocally, because he cares a lot. Like he cares a lot of where his lyrics come from. He took his, deathcore is very like our first few records were more about the sound than about the content. You know what I mean? Like CJ was a lot of, he has a very, very specific voice that I think was very influential to a lot of people at the time. But yeah, like the lyrics, most of the lyrics make no sense on our first two records. Respectfully, they just don't. So Dave coming in, especially with a few days to learn a full set with us, like the band he was in before in Providence, it was much more natural for him. It was much more just barking, loud projection. He wasn't doing as much work with his throat, I think, as far as learning different techniques. It was he did some of it, not to downplay it, but I think he pretty much learned a whole new style of vocal to be in this band, and then he spent our last, even now he's still, I think, learning, but he's pretty much got that style down. It over the course of us writing our third and fourth records, he was really still finding it, like seeing how far he can push it and without hurting himself, and where he can go up and down. And then this record, I think, is really cool because he went back, so there's a couple songs on our third and fourth record where he does do a little bit of his like barking style, which I love. I love his mid-range where you can hear the characteristic of his natural voice. It's very special. There's not a lot of people, like Phil from Whitechapel do it, Suicide Silence, Mitch did it. There's Nate Johnson was in early Fit for an Autopsy and a ton of other bands. That's a huge influence for him. Despised Icon, Alex. It's not a far stretch from their talking voice, and it's really unique. Whereas a lot of people, not a lot, but plenty of people can do the tunnel throat thing and make it sound like someone else. That characteristic of his voice sounds like him, and that's very hard to do as a metal vocalist. And so I have a ton of respect for him for that. And I do feel like this record, he came around back to that more comfortable. I think he was nervous to do it because he said this a couple of times. He felt like it almost felt a little lazy, where he's like, oh, like this is, it's very natural for him. It's easy for him to do. And part of him feels like, well, I need to be pushing myself. I need to be trying to, it should feel like I'm putting more effort into it. But we kind of just talked about it. We tried a lot of different techniques, a lot of different stuff for different songs. And we're like, at the end of the day, like you don't always have to be killing yourself. Like me as a drummer, like sometimes I'm doing crazy fast, like where it's killing me. Sometimes I'm just playing four on the floor. You know what I mean? Like give yourself that moment to relax and just let other things shine. And so yeah, I think that was a big turning point for him. Some of the vocals he was doing, he used to sit leaning back with his feet up on the desk and just holding the mic, and just doing it. And it's very natural. And I think he almost felt guilty for that, I think, at sometimes, because he's like, I feel like I should be doing more. And we're like, it sounds great. It fits the music, which is the most important thing. It's easy to understand. It's easy to relate to. So of course there's still plenty of moments on the record that are just insane and fucking gnarly. And, but I think, again, the producer, Josh, on that, was a huge guidance of when to be nasty and when to be more clear, and a lot of reworking lyrics to make them catchier and fit better with the in the context of the music. But sorry, to get around to that song, Fire and Stone has some really crazy fast parts, and there's like no room for him to breathe on that song. From the very beginning, he's belting, like the intro all the way up through. yeah, there's also a lot of our songs will have like a little bit of an interlude or something, or a chorus that is a bit more like, that more comfortable vocal range for him. And that one is just crazy. Like the I would call it a verse, but basically like after that first chorus, and then it just goes into this really heavy shit. Him and Mike spent a ton of time doing this section of this song, and Mike, our bassist, is like a thesaurus. Like, he is great with words. He's very very good with words and just phrasing. And so they worked on this record the most together with lyrics and vocals. They pretty much locked themselves in the room. Dave would be like, "I have this idea," and then Mike's like, "Well, try this and try this phrasing." It's really cool. I don't think Dave's ever had that before, really, to that extent. So Mike deserves a shout there. But yeah, there's a whole line that's like that's I don't know, it's tons of syllables in like a 5 second span. Very white Phil Bozeman, very Whitechapel vibes, what we were kind of going for. But just to get that clarity in his voice, to understand each of those words when he's going like I mean, it's basically rap speeds, you know what I mean? Like it's very impressive. And we spent a lot of time on that song in that section. I think we did that, and then we came back to it like another day because he's just like, my mouth is tired, he's just like and it's tough. So I think physically that one was probably one of the more difficult ones for him, for sure.
I love your thinking on like maybe easy isn't bad. Like I was talking to Alex Jones and how before he joined his band in Undeath, like he was in these bands killing his voice, and now he can't do it. But now he's in a realm where it's like, you know what, this is more my natural tone, and now I know how to work it. It's a very it's complicated. That's how I say it, people. It's complicated. But just as a fan, I already mentioned some of the bands I love, but if I were to say who's influenced me and who I hear in your music, I hear the Sugar in your music. I hear like the Deftones, but then you guys make it your own. But what I gravitate to in music is always the harmonies. The layering of the sounds. And for me, if I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna say Dream Killer was my favorite off the album. And I always like to pick and see like what about that composition did you say this would be the right place to have this harmony, this would be the right way to write it? Because you guys do go back and forth, back to the vocals. Sometimes you do have the clean vocals, you got a lot of praise for that. It's like, oh, guttery, clean, back to it. And then other songs are just straight heavy, other songs are straight this and that. So could you walk me through the process, just for me as a fan, the Dream Killer session, and how that came to life for you?
The intro and the chorus riff to that song I had written for, it was one of the few things I had written before we went to the studio. So I had about like 2 minutes of that song done, and we got to the last chorus, and there's some layering harmony guitars, which is a little prettier, and I didn't it we'd had it still being very intense and very brutal, just like the rest of the chorus is super fast kick drum. But we ended up doing this whole long build up. And I basically, when I wrote the song, I just left space and put a little bit of guitar in there, like clean guitar. I didn't know what to do yet exactly. And I was kind of trusting Josh to use his expertise to kind of point me in the right direction. And we started doing this thing, and I was like, man, I think he just started doing like synth bass over the clean guitar, or the lead guitar, like the really kind of like power metal do 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 thing. And I'm like, man, that's so cool. And we're all big fans of like uh like the Midnight and stuff like techno. I mean, there's a song called Techno Viking by Techno Viking. It's we love that shit. It's very like EDM, heavy. Well, obviously I don't ever want our band to sound like an EDM band, anything like that. But like that's where that stuff comes from. And yeah, just layers after layers after layers. And we started listening to it, and I remember the first like 20 minutes I was like, is this too much? Is this too different? Is this too, and at that point we didn't have vocals on it or anything, you know what I mean? So it's just guitar, and I'm like, I keep listening to it, I'm like, dude, this is so epic. It's just huge. So then we started like making it a little more simpler. Like we're saying, like it doesn't have to always be hard. So like we pulled a lot of the kick drums out and just made it a little more, straightforward. Just did a bunch of guitar layers, synth layers, and we spent a lot of time building up that section leading up to it. And then we ended up coming back and making the chorus longer. We added a guitar solo because it just fit. It was actually Carl, our guitar player's idea. He had just come in to the band like near the end of our studio session. And that wouldn't have happened without him because I wouldn't have wrote a solo there. And he was like, he was in another room just hanging out while we were working on shit in the studio. And he came in, he's like, dude, he's like, I wrote a solo for this. And at that time, the end of the chorus was shorter. So we ended up making it longer. We doubled it, and then we put that solo section in there at the end. And a big fade out. And yeah, like we kind of knew we were going to be playing some of these festivals in Europe this year, which are like, you know, we didn't know where we were going to be on time slots or stages or whatever, but we knew we'd be playing to a lot of new people, like maybe, you know, anywhere from a few thousand to 40,000 people at these festivals, which we've been working towards for a long time. So we were like, man, we want a couple songs like that, Pray for Death, Borrowed Time. They're just bigger, groovier, you know, things for the not just the people in the pit to care about, but the people that are, you know, 20,000 people back that are just watching you that really don't care that much. You know what I mean? They're just there for the show. I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that I feel like those people will remember. You know what I mean? They'll be like, that'll get stuck in your head. It's very catchy, it's very big. So yeah, that's kind of the thought behind that. And then we just kept building on it, building on it. We wanted something a little pretty. We used to be scared of melody and pretty, but we've kind of found a way to do it now. Like I said, where Dave's voice helps bring it together. So as long as it still feels heavy and whether it's emotionally heavy or whatever, it'll still feel like the band. You know, especially if you listen to the record front to back, it makes a lot of sense versus just putting that song on.
The melody adds to it; it doesn't take away. It keeps the
Yeah,
essence of the song.
that song, it feels great coming where it is on the album too. Like after Shackles has this awesome ending, and the way it leads into that song, it's just it feels right. You hear it, and it's just like this is what should be happening next. You know. So maybe the song by itself might be a little weird for people, but if you take the time to listen to the record, when it comes in, it's like it's such a breath of fresh air on the record. I think it was just the perfect place for it, and yeah, I love that song. I love that song very, very much.
And you know, you mentioned that Pray for Death was a part of that group of like, hey, let's get something that'll hook people. I didn't initially think that. That was my, you know, if I have to present this band to the public, if I gotta present it to my boy, like, hey, listen, I need some street cred with you. This is gonna be it. It would have been that tune. You know,
Yeah.
would you consider that to be the song off this album that would be the best takeaway, or is there a song that just personally for you, you're more of like, this hits the strongest if I have to represent us when we play.
Yeah, so I don't think that song's not one of the easier to listen to songs by any means, like Dream Killer might be. But you know, it's actually probably one of the more random, crazy ones. But vocally, when Dave was writing lyrics and stuff for that song, you'll notice it's slower, drawn out vocals. There's not really a lot of fast. It's not as crazy. He leaves a lot of room for the music. We kind of, when we were writing it, we were picturing like, imagine you're walking out on stage in front of 10,000 people, right? At these festivals. It's like, what's a catchy intro? So it's this big build up, and then everything drops out and it's just vocal call. You know what I mean? And it's a pretty easy to catch on lyric. And then just hits in and it's crazy. And then, you know, this kind of thing. And then the end, it like the main verse parts in the end are just like three repeating lyrics kind of over and over again, where it's, you know, the music is I mean, again, like we are very influenced by Meshuggah, so thank you for and Deftones for saying that. Like you know, Meshuggah, crazy band, right? There's hardly anything you can grab onto as like a casual listener with that band, but the lyrics have a cadence always. The lyrics always fill that role of giving you something to grab onto that's like easier to follow. That was kind of the idea with that song. Is it's very, you know, it's crazy, but if you know the lyrics are more of a constant in that, where you can grab onto that, I think. So that was just kind of the thinking with that. But I think it's not my favorite song on the record, but I think the song that represents the band the most on this record is probably Shackles Like Talons, because it has all the sounds from our new music, all the sounds from the record, the ambient intro, the build up, David's very you know, iconic mid-range barking vocal, and then it immediately kicks into this tapping brutal death metal riff, which is more of our like second and third record. And like I pulled a lot of that from those older records. I wanted that kind of riff that we used to do. And then there's a big catchy chorus, which is this record and our previous record has that vibe. And there's immediately after that huge open notes for Dave to kind of scream over and build the tension. That is straight pulled from our last record, our fourth record. And then Ridiculous Breakdown, our first and second record. It's just that song has everything about this band that I love in it in like a 5-minute span. And it makes sense. It feels good. It doesn't sound jumbled. It doesn't sound like it's not supposed to be like that. And I think very, very proud of that song. My favorite song, I think, is Faces Without Names, because I love the way the ending goes into melody, the last song, like that whole industrial groove, like that was like an accident. I was like, man, like I think we started doing some like that, those damaged drums, like tribal stuff, and it was going to be really short, and we were like, maybe we should put this somewhere else. And then we were like, fuck it, like what if we just like go all in on it? What if we make it like its own little song interlude kind of thing, but it's at the end of that song. And it sets up the industrial like groundwork for melody, the last song, so well. Like I think like we almost debated putting it in the beginning of that song instead of the end of Faces, but it just we wanted melody to kick in quick off the bat and not be too drug on. But I think Faces is one of my favorite tracks for that too. It shows a lot of what we're trying. That's more of like what we're going towards in the future. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like the last two songs, it's like the beginning of the record, quick bangers, get your attention. The middle of the record is like some of our more epic stuff, like our older songs, like Death Whistle and that kind of thing. And then the end, I feel like kind of shows more of like what we're hoping to do in the future, like a lot more of that noisy kind of gross shit.
And man, do you like it? It is funny. I want to be at my best, like happiest life to get these sounds out. I love that, man. That's like Jimi Hendrix, like always being happy. He's like, oh, I can't write happy songs, and then it's like, damn, I'm feeling pretty happy with this. Like,
Right.
and it's. I think the one that really caught my attention, other than the favorite Dream Killer, was Low and Empty, because that sounded really technical. And then knowing your story of like, you said to yourself, man, I could BS guitar, and now I'm like, the man's the whole band. It's just the progression of you becoming this musical mastermind, man. We got to call it what it is. You guys are about to go back on tour again, and this time the stakes are, they're at the level of where they should have been for so many years for you. And the first question that popped into my mind is, hold on, I gotta remember what the question was because I was so excited to ask it. Hold on, because I don't want to mess up. It's Dream Desecration, correct? That's how it's stated. Dream
Yeah,
Desecration.
Dreaming Desecration. Yeah.
So you guys stated that that's a song you haven't gotten to, and that's kind of like your Alexander the Great for Iron Maiden. Do you think it's feasibly possible that we might see this played live this round?
We're playing it on this tour now. Yep. For the first time ever, we're playing it this year. Yeah. Because so it has a big singing part, and Cory tracked it, and it was the first time we'd ever done singing like that. And we never, we were never like, oh, we're gonna put singing in deathcore and piss people, like that kind of thing. Like I said, we do a lot of our writing of just like, whatever feels right. And we did, Dave has some pitchy screaming vocals in that, and we're like, it'd be cool to have more melody to back him up. So it was mostly originally just going to be a backing layer of singing, just kind of quiet, which we do a lot on this record. But it came out so good. It sounds so good. It sounded like it should be the forefront. So we just did it. And like this, it's just what's right. It's what's right for the music, more than anything else. So, but yeah, we couldn't play it live really because Dave had tried to do the vocals, and he was always like right there with the singing, but he just never felt like super confident doing it because he's using so much of his voice to do these screaming. And he's like, I just worry that I wouldn't be able to really do it justice. So he's actually practiced that a lot over the years, and he's getting to the point where he could probably even pull it off now. But we have our guitar player now, Carl, has a wonderful singing voice as well. So we're just in a position again where we can do it, and we never were in that position from the time the song came out, until now. So yeah, we were like, fuck it, let's try to do it. And we put it in and we're gonna do it. And people ask for it a lot, it's kind of cool. It's a song that we didn't expect to be a really big song. and we never did a video for it. We did a remix video for it, just something different, but we never did like a proper video for that song, and we've never played it, but it's still one of our highest streaming songs from that record, and people ask for it sometimes, and it's just like a little sleeper track. So we were like, fine, let's do it. You know, we're doing other stuff that has some singing in it, and like a lot of, you know, Dave and Carl play off of each other a lot live, which is cool. It's a great dynamic for the band. I think I love being a four piece and having that the two vocalists thing is really cool. We're gonna see how it pans out. We're actually having our first our rehearsals here next week before we go out on these tours, and yeah, we're gonna be playing it hopefully as long as it goes well. So
You got to record it, man. That's a treat. That is a treat now, because you know that was the one, like written interviews, recorded, even press release. It's like, hey, they ain't done this one, so you know I'm excited for you guys.
we're doing a lot of stuff on this tour because we're in the UK. We're doing our first headlining stuff in the UK, so we wanted to do a long set, a lot of stuff we don't usually do. It's a very hard set. I've been practicing a lot here at my old home, and yeah, it's tough. There's a lot going on in the set, but it's cool. We get to play some stuff. We're playing a couple old songs, but nothing super old because we have so much new music now. It's like crazy, but it covers a lot of ground. We're playing pretty much anything from like our second record up to now. So playing a lot of stuff that people ask for, which is cool to be able to do that. Because we usually only get like 30-minute sets, you know, on these support tours. You could play 5, maybe 6 songs if we make them quick, you know, because we have some longer songs. So having the opportunity to like dig a little deeper and do stuff we don't usually do is really exciting for us. It's nice to get that like fresh take on the old stuff, you know.
Because you know when you get the 5 songs, it's got to be a quick hit and grab them. But now you can actually elaborate to the newer audience that you guys are gonna have. You watch the same Lamb of God DVD I did, and I think it was Randy who said we are here to blow Slayer off the stage.
Randy and Mark Morton sitting in that room together. I will remember that my whole life. That's cool that I love you do your research. I appreciate that. But yeah, I remember seeing that as a kid. I was like, you know, in my first band, it's like Slayer's like the greatest band in the world, but it is our job to make them work harder, you know? So we always go out and try to we have tons of respect for the bands that we support, of course, but we don't hold anything back. You know, we've had tours and gigs where some guys from the headlining bands have like asked our sound guys to like dial it back a bit because like, you know, because we try to fully come out swinging, and we want to leave an impression, and we want to make other, and that's, you know, something we say to these people, like, respectfully, you know, like it is then your job to step it up, you know. So if you can't step it up, I'm sorry. Again, respectfully, you know what I mean. I'm not trying to sound rude, but yeah, we try not to hold anything back at all.
So who was the best competition thus far? Like you've experienced that, like that genuine, like, hey, we're friends. I'm gonna get you. Who was that band you guys were up against? Like this was just a fun tour because it was the back and forth every night.
When we did Chaos and Carnage, I think this is a great example. When we did Chaos and Carnage last year, we switched spots every other day with Angel Maker. So it would always be Distant, and then it would either be Angel Maker then us, or us then Angel Maker. And then it was Upon a Burning Body, Lorna Shore, or maybe the other way around, Lorna Shore, or something like that. Upon a Burning Body, Lorna Shore, Carnifex, Suicide Silence. It's a crazy tour. But yeah, I think in our careers, us and Angel Maker are kind of at the same level. You know, they've been around a bit longer than us, and they have some more catchier vocal lines that really get the crowd going, which is something we've tried to implement on this record. We learned that from touring with them and Suicide Silence and Lorna Shore. We'd switch with them every day, and we have a ton of respect for them. I think they have a ton of respect for us, which is great. And we share our gear with them and this kind of thing. So that was a very friendly. I especially don't think of anything as a competition. It's not even a competition going out there to be better than the headlining bands or whatever, but it's just like we need to be the best that we can be all the time, and whatever that means for anybody else is whatever it means for them, you know. Whether that means they need to do better or they're going to blow us out of the water, you know. Like we tour with Whitechapel, and we have absolutely no chance of keeping up with Whitechapel. They're a perfect band. They have a perfect crew. You know, it's like shooting for the moon. As long as you land on the stars, you got something going. You know what I mean? Or the other way around, shoot for the stars, land on the moon. I don't know.
No, I like your way better. Let's stick with that.
Yeah, so Angel Maker was a good one. I think, it was very respectful. A lot of, some days they'd go on before us, and then it's like, we got to keep up with that. And then the days we go on, I think that they have to, try a little harder to outdo us. And I think that was really cool. And it's nice to be able to do that with a band like that are cool people and understand it and appreciate it and respect it and not be upset about it,
Yeah, and you hear the horror stories of these like headliners, maybe more so notable when they hit the stadiums, but a lot of these stories is like, man, these guys were just they were assholes for no reason. We didn't do anything yet. That again back to the deathcore, that community, even metal too. Like I think thrash is probably the best representation of like you can go there and you'll make friends even if you don't talk to nobody. So, for me, I'm still confused how naming a van equals it exploding and blowing up in any sense of being on. Did somebody throw some C4 on it? Was it like WWE Stone Cold dropped and demolished it? What actually happened? I'm not even concerned with what you named it. Like, what happened for it to explode?
We've had 5 vans, I think 5 or 6 vans, and all the ones, the three I think we had that we named all ended pretty tragically. So the last one we had, we didn't name, and the transmission ended up going out, but it gave us like 5 strong years of abuse, I mean, I'm lucky. I come from a family of mechanics, actually, so like we are pretty good about keeping up on our stuff. But yeah, that one was the first one we chose not to name it because the last one we had shit out pretty bad and we named it. And yeah, and then so that was just like a thing. We're like, we're not going to name this one, and it made it, like 5 years before we had to really do any work to it. And this one we just got a new van, haven't named it, and this one is a little bit more unreliable, but we decided to go a little bit bigger because we have more crew people with us now, and so we got a Sprinter, and it's a cool van, but it's just we built it out ourselves. We got a big cargo van and just put beds in it and all that kind of stuff, and it's cool, but it's just a different kind of van, like we had like I think the Chevy Expresses are like the go-to band van, like the white band van, you know what I mean? And they're great. They're super reliable. They're really easy to take care of and work on. And but yeah, it's just kind of a joke. I don't think it's too serious. I mean, lots of dudes that name their bands have no problems, but the 3 we had that we named blew up, and the one that we didn't. I mean, eventually it kind of started to go, but it gave us, we had it paid off before it went out. So I was grateful for that. So yeah, so this one we decided not to name it either. We do call it some silly names sometimes, but there's no name plastered on the inside or anything.
So comparing that to your old van, because the setup you guys had, you had the trailer in the back with all your stuff, and then you had like the bunk beds, and then the space below so somebody could sleep down there or not sleep down there. And bro, I just feel so. I know why these vans die, but I feel worse for your back because when you started touring, you're the only one old enough to drive, and that's like 19. How old are we both now? That's over 6-7 years later. All those miles on your back. Yeah. Do you guys still have Clunky?
Clunky. No. That was Cory's. Cory's bird. Yeah, we don't have it anymore. It wasn't even as serious as what we made it out to be. We just thought it'd be so funny to really go into it for that video because it was like, why not? Because we did take him on a couple tours and we take pictures of him and stuff and put it online.
Shit was serious to me. I went to the Grand Canyon. We had something in common.
Yeah, it was cool. We had that. I had a little stuffed pig that I got from the Mall of America. I used to take him everywhere and take pictures of him and stuff. It's just something to do, something to keep your mind off. So you can send pictures home to my fiance and shit. So, but no, the back thing is a good point though. Like it was funny when we first did that and we called it the dungeon. We actually ended up having to raise it up a little bit because it was too low, too small in there. Because if you would have gotten an accident, it would have been like absolutely deadly. But I used to be scared to sleep under there, and then I started getting so exhausted that I just didn't care. It was like nice and it was really quiet down there. So I would just crawl in, and within 5 minutes I was dead, and I'd wake up, wherever we ended up, and I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, I was in a van accident with another band in like 2017, and it was pretty bad. Like our van was not too fucked up; it was total, but it was like not, we didn't roll or anything, but it was pretty bad. The car that we hit, a kid pulled out in front of us at a stop sign. He didn't stop, and we crushed his car. And it was really sad. It was really scary at the time, but the EMTs came and they were like, "Oh, do you want to go to the hospital and all this?" And I felt totally fine. I was like amazed that that I was fine, because I was in the back, and some of the guys up front got it a little worse. They had some cuts, dislocated shoulder, but like no one was critically injured on our side at all. But years later, I have felt the effects of that. I have a pretty bad back now, touring, setting up drums, playing drums, sleeping in a van. Like it's definitely taken its toll on me. I feel it. I've been pretty good lately. I don't want to get, too too deep into it, but I have some knee problems. Sometimes we'll be driving, my knees will kill me, like to the point where I want to tear up because it's so sore. I'm only 28. I have a knee brace that I wear on tour whenever no, just when I need it. It'll come, flare up for a couple days, and it'll be really sore. That accident changed a lot for me. It's changed a lot about the way my band operates and how we drive, and how we're very careful, and we have a very good team of people that drive and are very careful about our driving. So, but yeah, the van life can be tough, but it doesn't really get any better until you can afford a bus. They have bandwagons, you can rent vans, but they're all pretty much the same. You get a bed, you're gonna be bumpy, it's gonna be miserable. It just kind of is what it is.
But again, the parallels between the music, the musician, and the WWE athlete. I'm a big wrestling fan too. If you haven't seen with the belt over there, but
Yeah,
it's
see, yeah.
it's one of those things like you sit there, you're in pain. Like I did some training a long time ago, and I still get it now and again. It's like, damn, I gotta fall on my back just to feel normal, but it hurts.
Yeah,
But you realize how much you truly love what you're doing to suffer for, even and when you're in the moment it doesn't feel like suffering, but when you're pulling back you're like, ah, shit, you know.
yeah. The
I
game changer. I have a Theragun, take it on tour, and all the guys will be like, "Yo, you got your thing with you? I need that." So we all pick each other up before we play sometimes. And I actually stopped. Like, I don't really warm up that much as a drummer anymore. I feel like I do a little bit of, I put the sticks in my hands, tap around, whatever, but I don't really like have a routine. I hit my whole body with that Theragun for like 10, 15 minutes. Get my fingers, even like, fingers, arms through here, and the tendons and all that. And that has been like, I actually saw Jay Weinberg from Slipknot, because they do 2 hour sets every day, and it's traveling and that thing. And he said that was like, this was a few years ago. I saw an interview, and he's like, this is the thing that changed my life. He's like, I hardly warm up. And I was like, yeah, like I'll get one, might as well. They were on sale at the time. So I was like, fuck, I'll get one. And yeah, literally life changing. Like it makes such a difference. And I actually came home from the last tour with Whitechapel for my birthday. I think it was either Whitechapel or Mexico. For my birthday, my fiance got me she booked me time for my birthday at a spa to get a massage, and I'd never done that before, like a stone massage, all this stuff. It was crazy. It was so nuts. I think I offended the lady because I was like, this feels so weird. She's like, weird? I'm like, it's just not anything I've ever felt before. It feels great. But yeah, I'm trying much harder these days to take care of my body, because 10 years now or so of touring, it's definitely caught up to me, especially after that accident. About a year after that, I started feeling it really bad. It comes and goes, but yeah, we have beds now, which is great. Our old vans, we used to just sleep on the seats and wherever we could. So that's kind of why we went this route, get some a little bigger.
I'm gonna say
That's
this.
nice.
I'm gonna say this, man. At least when you come out, look like you've been warming up. Even if you, like, I saw a Volbeat strummer come out doing this shit. I was like, oh, this is about to be a show. First time I saw him, I was
Yeah.
blown. But you guys have had some really good shows. You've been with some really great bands with all the setbacks. But the two shows, or at least like places that keep on popping up that were very pivotal in interviews that I've noticed, was the Philippines show and the trip to Japan. You know, for you personally, were those still defining shows and there's more to come, or was there another show that hasn't been mentioned yet where it's just like, man, there might not have been a lot of people there, but everything clicked? Or you know what, this was my hometown show, or you know what, this is where Breaking Benjamin played and I always wanted to play here. Are there any other
Yeah.
shows that hit you on that level of like accomplishment?
Honestly, the smaller shows are probably still the most fun for us because there's just something about it's much less pressure. Like, yeah, it's one of those things when we play these like more intimate venues that are like maybe 200 people, 300 people in a small room, it's like I hate to say I feel like I don't have to try as hard because I do still try very hard, but like I feel like I can be myself. Like I'm not being analyzed as much. It's like the room, the energy's there. It's like they're just more so. It just feels like the people are just like happy to be there. Like I can kind of fuck around. Like I can play a fill different, or I can change a part, and like people are stoked on it versus being like really far away and watching and be like, oh, what was that? That was different. You know what I mean? So it's a little more liberating, and the energy is usually better, and it's just like less pressure. We're like, we're just gonna go fucking play, and whatever happens, cool, great, and it's gonna be fun. The bigger shows are, I don't really get nervous because like I'm kind of past like the nervous thing. Every now and then I get it, but most of the time I'm comfortable. But the bigger shows, I feel like I usually do have to be a little more like, on my shit. Like I have to perform what people are expecting to hear, kind of thing. But yeah, the Philippines was just huge, like because it's obviously not a great area. It's a beautiful place, but it's a little scary, honestly. But yeah, that we had the show out there. It was free. They had some like local Filipino bands that are like very popular there that they don't really get out much, but the crowds in the area like come from far and wide to see them. So they kept telling us like it's an outdoor show and it's like in a parking lot. We're like, okay, cool. It'll probably be kind of weird, whatever, but it'll be cool. And it was like a mall parking lot and they shut it down and they made the show free because obviously people there don't have a ton of extra money. And so they're just coming on like literally coming in buses in waves. Like they open the doors and it's just a sea of people walking in this parking lot, like 3 or 4 thousand people. It was nuts. And we're just like looking at like, yo, like within an hour, there's like 1,000 people there. And we're like, what the fuck is going on? We thought there'd be a couple hundred people here. And yeah, and I mean a lot of it I think was for those local bands that are kind of really famous in that area, really helped. It's still cool. It's a really cool community. I mean, we got to play like a full we didn't headline, but we played like our full headlining set. They wanted us to play like an hour, so we got to play a long set. And yeah, that was just insanely eye-opening because like the trip they put us in a hotel kind of outside of town in like a better area, I guess you could say, a little safer, which I'm very grateful for. But so we had to take like an hour and a half long van ride into town to get to the venue. So we're driving past, kids that sleep on mattresses on the street and homes made out of sheet metal where they work and cook and live and it's dirty and it's just it was one of the first or one of the like we've been to a lot of places that are very different, but it was the first time where it was just like wow, we are here. People want to see us play fucking deathcore in a place where they are working and working, living on the streets. It's like it's just incredible. Honestly, I have so much respect for those people there. Of course, like Tokyo and everything's like a dream destination for most people. So we go and we it's the same kind of thing. We have no idea what to expect. You don't know how many people are going to be there. You don't know anything really except for what it looks like in pictures. And yeah, they're so respectful and they throw down like hardcore kids do here in the States but they do it in a way that's just interesting. It's its own culture. uh, it was the first time we ever went anywhere where we were treated kind of like celebrities, and we were nobody at the time, and we're still not really like that notable for most places, but like at the time we had done barely anything aside from some US tours. I think our first international tour we ever did was Asia, actually, which was just crazy to think about. Like go to Japan and we've been there for like 4 years, 5 years. Treated us like crazy. It was the first time we ever like had shuttles and hotels and catering, and they had people there to help us with our stuff, and they're just so respectful, like in a way that I can't even describe. Like I think we were outside one of the shows where we were walking down the street and there was like a restaurant outside. People look at you differently because you're different. You have tattoos. You're noticeably American. And like I think Dave had a bottle of wine and we had drank and he had dropped it accidentally on the ground and the glass broke. and he went to pick it up because of course, we make a mess, we're gonna pick it up. And like people that just worked in these stores like came out and they like held us. They're like, no, no, like they would not let us pick up the glass. Like they came out with a broom and everything and they cleaned it up and they would not let us touch it. It's just like such an interesting level of respect that I have never seen anywhere else in the world. So that's just a very special place. Shows are great. The way I mean, they treat everyone very well, but especially us, it was just, we'd never seen anything like that. It was crazy. So that will always have a special place in my heart. Then we went back again and it was awesome that time too. But that first time there, I'll just never forget that, like the way they treat you. And that's become one of my favorite places in the world just because of that. It's beautiful. And the people there are very different from anywhere else I've ever been.
I'm sitting here reminiscing about our conversation about what I've learned about you guys, and just seems that this band has been so helpful in just pushing people to get to the next step. Like, even I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Mike who just recently joined too. I know everybody's kind of just hopping in, but he said like he just lost his job, he was depressed, and you guys reached out to him. It was like, hey, come on, man, come play with us. We need a bassist, and it totally gave him a new lease on life. And your story of like fighting to get this band to the top. I always end the interview with the same question: what's the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
Not so much that somebody told me, but I remember seeing, we were talking about like the DVDs, like Lamb of God DVDs. The Parkway Drive one when I was younger was a huge one for me. The Home is Where the Heart Is, and there's somewhere in there where they mentioned basically just like showing up and having a good attitude will take you farther than anything else could, farther than your skill. And they talk about in that DVD, they're like, we are not great musicians. Like we're just kids from this tiny place making music in our bedroom, but we're happy and we have a good attitude and we work really hard. And I listen to this podcast too. I love podcasts. Um, um, I got a bunch actually, but a couple things I live by. This podcast I love. It's called The Last Podcast on the Left. They talk about all the time. We're not special people. We're not anything. We are literally just guys that work very, very hard. We're not that smart. We're not that great at what we do, but we work very, very hard, and we have a good attitude, and that's everything to me. Also things too like being on tour is very hard. Being away from home is very hard. Things come up, and it's another big thing that I like to live by is like things, things that happen to you are not, whether it's things at home or mental health or what have you. Things are not your fault, but they are your responsibility. Um, So just being able to like maintain yourself, keep that positive attitude, I think that's like everything to me. I've never really had anything. Like I said, the thing my mom said to me about, great drummers, that is like the one thing that my whole life has stuck with me more than anything. I don't know if it's really advice as much as it is just like, but I take it as advice, honestly. Like people ask me sometimes like, oh, like you do a lot of writing. Most people who do that would prefer to play guitar because you kind of get to be up on stage, moving around. You get to, it's a little bit, it's not easier by any means than being a drummer, but it's like a little more freeing. It's less stuff to lug around with a little bit less work. And, I'm like, I could, I guess, but that's just something about being a drummer. It's just, it's special to me. And I think it's special to a lot of people. So, yeah, that's those are about all I got. I don't think I'm trying to think on tour if anyone's really kind of hit me with anything, but not really. It's mostly just just been that have a good attitude and just keep showing up. Like just no matter what happens, just be there and try to have a smile on your face, and like people will remember that more than they remember your performance or anything. You know what I mean? So that's huge for me, and I think our band in general.
Wise words from Bobby Crow. Guys, Signs of the Swarm, July 28th. Put it on your calendars. Amongst the Low and Empty is dropping. You need to go check out their website. You need to go check them out on Instagram, Facebook. I'm going to even say Twitter, but it's the same name, Signs of the Swarm. Bobby, sir, thank you so much for gracing us with your time, man. It was a fun and truly epic talk, bro.
Absolutely. This is far and wide one of the most fun interviews I've ever had. So thank you. It's great.
Likewise. And everybody else, you already know what I'm going to say, but we're going to say it anyway. Be smart, be mindful, rock on. Sounds like the dogs are having issues. And enjoy your life, guys. As always, Ninja out.
Woo, baby, you listen to John the Ninja. All your ears are about to go on a vacation. John the Ninja's got what you need.